Hello, and I've been reviewing books on the SOE and OSS, and I've been working my way through my collection when Mark, who trains with us at the Gutterfighters, loaned me a book which I hadn't read, and I was delighted to acquire on a loan, and it's this one, SOE, The Scientific Secrets by Frederick Boyce and Douglas Everett. The book has a foreword by MRD for Professor Foote, so it gives that stamp of authority to it. And the book opens in a very, very intriguing way with the arrival of a German spy by parachute into England early on in the war. And he caches his parachute and his equipment, including his survival supplies, and goes to ground, not knowing that he's very, very close to one of the most secret establishments in the country. And after 3 days of laying up and hiding, he is arrested, interrogated, and then hanged. But the establishment that he was so close to discovering was Station 9, the Frythe, which was one of the scientific establishments of SOE. And the book, like many of the books that we've reviewed, goes into the early days of Section D of SIS and MIR of the War Office, and how they had their own establishments for either research or training. And then when SOE was they amalgamated into SOE, these establishments came online for the new organization. And one of the other things the book emphasizes is the secrecy, that SOE had a myriad of cover names, cover identities, and these establishments use these different identities, and SOE was not a term that was known. In fact, the government actually denied its existence in Parliament, and it was only after the war that the name Special Operations Executive actually became known. The establishments, those that had Roman numerals, were research and experimental, and those that had Arabic numerals were training. So that's something to bear in mind when you read about the different places. One of the things the book mentions, which I hadn't been aware of at all before, was that Scotland Yard put out an appeal to firearms certificate holders to send in their weapons, and these were passed on to SOE, and there were thousands surrendered over different phases of the war, including several thousand German weapons, or weapons of German origin, which were used by SOE obviously to provide authentic weapons in the occupied countries. The co-author of the book, Douglas Everett, was actually a member of SOE. He went through vetting by MI5, then was, even though he was recruited from Oxford, and even though he was slated to go into the research, they decided to put him through the training pipeline to give him the experience of what was required by the organisation. So he went up to Scotland, went through the complete training, Bewley and so on, and then he was made second in command, and then later the commander of Station 9, the Frythe at Welling. And the other chap, Frederick Boyce, was from scientific and industrial background, and he, when at the end of the war the Frythe was taken over by a major chemical company, and he was involved in decommissioning the weapons and other hazardous, the explosives and other hazardous materials. One of the main focuses of the experimental stations was explosives, and SOE was involved in providing the explosives for the Saint Nazaire raid, the massive attack on the docks, a combined operation which was fantastic, large-scale operation which was successful, and also their own SOE operation, Josephine B, which was an attack on the electrical supply in France to a particular industrial area, where they destroyed a number of electrical power supply equipment stations, and this again was a really well performed act of sabotage. The Fry's at Welland was one of the main centres. Another one was the Thatch Barn at Barnet. And I remember I was working not too far away on a team at Totteridge, and we used to go from central London, where we were staying, out to Totteridge. And we were on the bypass, and we came across this place, and it was operating as a roadhouse at the time. And the other team member, who was ex-regiment bloke, and myself went in, and we had a cup of tea. And as I remember, there was something that was a memento of the war, because we did talk about it. One of the, apart from explosives, another big thing that they did was the initiation devices, the switches. And some of the switches that they devised, you know, they were pressure, release of pressure, release of tension, and so on. Basically, the designs are unchanged today. They may be made of a better plastic casing, but the design dates back to the war, and they were very effective. And one in particular was the Imber Switch, which was for sabotage of railway lines and locomotives. And it was ingenious. It fitted under the rail, and when a train hits the rail, there's a minute bending of the rails, and this will push a plunger, but it could be set to ignore up to seven previous trains going over it, and hit the 8th, or any number up to 8. So if you knew the ammunition train was going to be train 6, you could set it to train 6, and so on. So that was quite an interesting and ingenious device. Another device now was the Incendiary Arrow, which I hadn't been aware of before. Now, the people that they recruited for this kind of work, they were really serious professionals. They came from industry, they came from academia, they came from the military, and they were all experts in the field, and they were very much focused on providing practical solutions to problems. And I was amazed at the breadth of the research and the speed at which these devices were produced, particularly under wartime restrictions on material. For example, rubber was it was a strategic material in the UK. So for waterproofing things, rubber was at a premium. The subject of industrial sabotage was studied. They brought in experts to train the guys and to devise methods of attacking specific types of industrial targets, whether they were large machinery factories, electrical supply or transport hubs, this kind of thing. They taught lessons which again have carried on into modern special forces on how to attack large plants and so on. They would develop chemicals, they would study the vulnerable points, access to different machines, how machines operate, and so on. And one of the things they did develop was an abrasive material which could be added to grease, or it could be an actual grease with abrasive in it, which you could squirt into a machine with this knowledge. And that was used to, excuse me, to sabotage railway stock and make it all seize up. And the most well-known use of it, was used in France quite a bit, was after D-Day. The resistance managed to hinder Das Reich Division, the Waffen-SS Panzer Division, from moving to the beachhead. And in a move that should have been very, very quick, they delayed them for several days. So much so that the Waffen-SS actually committed several atrocities on the way, including levelling the town of Orador. Another interesting device which I had heard about, and it's in the Special Devices catalogue, was the itching powder, which was Mucuna. But this was actually made from buffalo beans. Now, buffalo beans are well known in Africa. The Rhodesians used to play jokes on each other by putting buffalo bean hairs, it's very, very fine small hairs, shake them into people's clothes, and it is a maddening itch, you can't stand it. And what the resistance would do is introduce it into the laundries of German sailors and particularly U-boat crews. And when they put these clothes on aboard the ship, they just couldn't function. It would be maddening. They thought they had skin diseases. Another section was the physiological section, which studied emetics, stimulants, anesthetics, lacrimators, and poisons, including some very, very exotic poisons. They had samples of curare and other South American venoms brought to the UK, and they would study them, see if they could replicate them, and so on. And this included the study for the suicide tablets, the L pills that agents were issued with, and some of them had a special coating which was impervious to saliva. So you could keep it in your mouth for an extended period of time if you were going to a checkpoint or some sort of possible arrest situation. And then if you were going to be arrested and the game was up, you just bit onto the tablet, and it was fairly quick acting to avoid the horrible torture you might be subjected to. So I was amazed really with the breadth of research. You know, sometimes SOE has been characterized as an amateur outfit, but the scientific side of it was highly professional, probably more professional than most of the other parts of the war effort, including SIS. I think SOE did really excel in this area, and the book goes into so much detail. In some ways it parallels the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It covers the same, basically the same aspects of the SOE, but the Ministry book slightly more concerned with personalities, and this book is slightly more concerned with the actual methodology and the science behind it. But it's by no means a heavy read. It's highly entertaining to read, and it really is a great contribution, an absolute delight. and I really thank Mark for loaning it to me, and I'll certainly recommend it to anyone who's interested in this subject.